They invited us to the peace table with fake smiles, right after glassing our colonies and calling it a clerical error. For 8 years we sat. We listened. We offered peace. And they laughed. But the second Earth stood up and walked out, the galaxy forgot how to breathe. Because when humans stop talking, they start hunting. And the Empire's about to learn, humanity doesn't do mercy. We do math. Vengeance. And complete annihilation. The chamber was silent but for the hum of translation drones. Commander Dax Marrow stood at the center of the Galactic Tribunal, shoulders squared, gaze fixed. Behind him, Earth's banner hung limp, untouched by the artificial breeze. The others, scaled, feathered, plated in chrome or glistening with gel skin, sat in their thrones like gods who'd already passed judgment. Dax said nothing. He let them finish. The Zarn delegate, shaped like a tree strangled by muscle, clicked its mandibles and spoke through its voice synth. Humanity's request is acknowledged. It rasped. The Empire offers compromise. Earth shall retain limited orbital sovereignty. In exchange, you will surrender Antarctica's mineral shelf, allow open genetic sampling of your population, and submit 80 million conscripts by cycle's end. Dax blinked slowly. His lip twitched, just enough for someone watching too closely to wonder if it was amusement or disgust. Let me see if I've understood, he said. His voice was low, but it carried. We give you the bones of our planet, the minds of our children, and the blood of our poor. And in return, we get to call ourselves cooperative livestock? The Zarn delegate recoiled slightly. A few snickers rippled through the tribunal. The Seraphid envoy fluttered its crystalline wings. You misunderstand. This is not slavery. It is partnership. Mutually beneficial integration. A chance for humanity to evolve beyond its violent instincts. Dax stepped forward. We tried that. You slaughtered New Dresden. 300,000 civilians dead in an hour. You called it a border error. A trill of static laughter crackled from the Jekran corner. One of them muttered, Such fragile numbers. Dax's eyes flicked to him. He said nothing, but his silence was a loaded gun. The High Arbiter, a bloated orb of sentient mist, pulsed impatiently. Commander Marrow, Earth petitioned to join the Accord. You chose to sit at this table. We have entertained your grievances. But the stars are ruled by order. If humanity cannot comply, it may vacate. Dax smiled. He reached into his coat. Instantly, several guards snapped to attention. A tense click of weapons charged. From inside his coat, Dax produced a cube. Obsidian black. Smooth as bone. He placed it on the table and pressed his thumb to it. The cube hissed. Split. Dissolved. At that moment, the banners behind Earth's seat went dark. All of them. The Terran emblem, the flag of the Accord, the display of diplomatic neutrality, erased in a blink. The lights around Dax flickered once, as if the chamber itself took a breath. You want us to vacate? Dax asked. Done. 100 feeds around the galaxy broadcast the moment. Billions watched a human turn his back on diplomacy. Billions more would remember the exact frame Dax said the words that began it all. You may keep your treaties. Keep your thrones. Keep your manufactured peace. But know this, Earth does not kneel. Not to you. Not to anyone. He turned to leave. You would forfeit everything? The High Arbiter boomed, voice thick with disbelief. I forfeited everything when I buried my family on a glass colony you called a miscalculated trajectory. Now it's your turn to calculate. The Seraphid envoy tried again. This is irrational. Your species cannot stand alone. You lack the fleets. The reach. You are outnumbered and... Dax paused. Looked back once. You think this is about numbers? He raised a hand. Snapped his fingers. Across the tribunal, every human diplomat, 8 in total, stood at once. Each drew a blade across their own palms. Blood spilled onto hidden sigils beneath their sleeves, each one glowing with a faint red pulse. The Empire's network stuttered. The lights flickered harder. A moment later, across the stars, the Galactic Accord's central archives, Every file, treaty, biometric database, and ancestral chain vanished. Not deleted. Rewritten. The systems showed the same data. But it wasn't the truth anymore. Humanity hadn't just withdrawn. They'd infiltrated the ledger of history itself. Dax's voice, cold and calm, cut through the stunned silence. You built your empire on paper and power. We spent 8 years sitting quietly, studying the way you breathe. The Zarn delegate growled. You'll be annihilated. You've already tried that, Dax said. No one moved. Not the guards. Not the scribes. Not even the arbiter. You don't understand what you've started. The Jekran envoy spat. Dax finally walked out. Neither did you, he replied. But you'll understand when it's already too late. As the doors sealed behind him, a timer clicked into place on the tribunal's main display. It wasn't labeled. Just a series of red numbers, counting down from 48 hours. Nobody dared ask what it was for. The moment he stepped onto the transport pad, he spoke to Earth Command. Phase 1 complete. Prepare for activation. Full protocol. Understood, came the reply. They suspect? They think we're bluffing. And are we? Dax didn't smile. Not even slightly. The transmission ended. And a galaxy built on conquest began to remember what fear felt like. The silence after Earth's withdrawal echoed across the stars. In the Empire's throne sectors, broadcasts stuttered. News channels called it a bluff. Military analysts chuckled behind sealed lips. They'll crawl back, they said. They always do. But Earth didn't send apologies. It sent a blackout. 47 minutes after Dax Marrow left the tribunal, subspace communication across 3 sectors dropped. Entire diplomatic relay networks went dark. No warning. No trace. The Empire blamed solar flares. Then backup lines failed. Then station beacons fell offline. Within 6 hours, 212 planetary governors filed emergency reports. The words were almost identical. We've lost Earth's channels. And then we lost our own. Admiral Kirill of the Imperial Navy stared at the tactical feed, red markers spreading like blood across a star map. This is sabotage, he said. Coordinated. Impossible without inside knowledge. It's psychological warfare, said the seer of Eric's, her voice trembling. They want us to panic. Kirill scoffed. Please. They've sabotaged communications. We still outgun them 1,000 to 1. I'll send the Gorgon fleet to Terra itself. Let them scream into the void. The Gorgon fleet never reached Terra. 17 dreadnoughts. 36 cruisers. All vanished en route to Sol. No transmissions. No survivors. What returned days later was a single life pod drifting near the Serpent Nebula. Inside was the fleet's lead strategist, floating with a carved message on his chest. You think silence means safety? We wrote the silence. In a war chamber buried beneath the Empire's capital, High Executor Arvin gritted his teeth as his council bickered. Who gave them this reach? He barked. Earth was supposed to be isolated. They were, muttered Minister Tovek. Until we gave them tech? Shared systems. Installed joint diplomatic AI. We thought it was control. They turned it into study. Arvin's voice dropped to a growl. We built the Accord to keep them obedient. Not to teach them how we bleed. Tovek replied, voice thin as paper. It seems they were listening harder than we were speaking. Somewhere in deep space, a research satellite spun out of control. Aboard, the screams of a dozen scientists echoed into cold vacuum as their oxygen scrubbers vented in reverse. The cameras caught one of them clawing at a screen just before she lost consciousness. Written in blood. New Dresden says hello? Back on Zerith 9, panic twisted into confusion. Delegates tried reopening contact with Earth. Every frequency failed. Every signal bounced back with a single image, Dax Marrow's face, still, expressionless, with text below him that read, We did not forget. We did not forgive. You just mistook our patience for peace. The Empire convened a special war session. 12 Grand Admirals, 16 planetary kings, and 3 machine minds debated retaliation. They spoke of overwhelming shows of force, precision strikes, shock and awe diplomacy. At hour 19, something new happened. A transmission burst through all galactic feeds. It didn't come from Earth. It came from inside the Empire. The feed showed a prison moon, Sekarthuli, where a riot had broken out. Only it wasn't a riot. It was a massacre. The prisoners had weapons. Terran weapons. Coordinated formations. Military-grade tactical movement. The guards were overwhelmed in 5 minutes. One of the prisoners, a reptilian female with no arms and half her jaw missing, turned to the broadcast drone and said, "Earth taught us that pain is just memory unsorted. Today, we remember how to strike." The Empire's heart skipped a beat. Someone screamed from the war chamber, "They've armed the subjugated!" Moments later, reports poured in. Uprisings on 14 planets. Slave colonies rebelling in unison. Empire loyalists dragged into the streets, not for death, but for broadcasting. The galaxy was watching. Someone in the chamber whispered, "This isn't war. It's retribution." Arvin slammed his fist into the table. "Enough of this slow bleed. Send the Archons. Cut the infection at the root." The Archons, cybernetic god soldiers, elite executioners, undefeated in 3 centuries, were dispatched to Mars. They arrived to find the planet empty. No cities. No resistance. Just sand, cold wind, and towers built of broken ships. A graveyard designed as a message. On the Martian surface, one Archon discovered a monument. It was a single black spike driven into the ground with a plaque. On it were the names of every human killed in New Dresden. Below the names, "We studied your peace. Then we studied your cruelty. Now you'll study extinction." When the Archons tried to return, their jump drives failed. They were trapped in orbit as their ships slowly turned on them. One by one, internal systems fired, locking their own warriors in stasis fields or imploding chambers mid-jump. Dax Marrow's voice came through the static. "I once heard a Jekran general say humans don't belong among the stars. That we're too brutal. Too reckless. He was right. We don't belong. We dominate. We endure. We infect every rule you ever wrote with the one truth you can't erase. We learn. Always." The chamber fell into silence again. But this time, no one laughed. Minister Tovek broke it first. "We need terms. Now. Before they collapse the spine worlds." Arvin shook his head slowly. "You still think they want terms?" And then he saw it. A new report. From inside the Council's own data vaults. Every system. Every weapon. Every star chart. Altered. Not deleted. Rewritten. Humanity had overwritten their history. Every world now bore a shadow. A mirrored twin of its own file, invisible until now. On that twin record were coded notes, patterns, and sabotage seeds embedded within standard protocol. They had been inside the Accord's data structure for over 7 years. Humanity didn't need to fire weapons. They already lived in the Empire's blood. Arvin's voice was hollow now. They were never asking for peace. They were preparing for justice. No one answered. The lights dimmed again. And the countdown began. Admiral Kirill's hands trembled as he gripped the command rail of the dreadnought Vigilant Fong, eyes locked on the screen that no longer showed Earth's orbital zone. Where once there were beacons, satellites, and patrol telemetry, there was now only silence. No wreckage. No debris. Just absence. The Empire's most advanced sensors couldn't even detect gravitational distortion. It was as if Sol itself had pulled back from the galaxy. He activated Secure Channel Alpha 9. "Command to Gorgon Fleet. Confirm status." Silence. He repeated the command. The channel flickered. Then came static, followed by a burst of Terran language, distorted but intelligible. "You sent wolves to our door," the voice said, calm as winter. "We didn't bark. We didn't run. We opened it. Kirill staggered back, his mouth dry. That's not a distress beacon. That's. The bridge officer finished for him. A warning. At that same moment across the Empire, doors began to close. Not metaphorically, physically. Docking bays sealed shut, AI cores shut themselves off, transport stations failed. In mining colonies and resort planets alike, every Imperial terminal began to loop a single phrase in red text. This network has been repurposed. Please remain calm while your reality is updated. On Kirill's flagship, one of the junior officers shrieked as her console erupted in sparks. The weapons systems were being overridden. Not externally. From within. A technician screamed. The guidance AIs are running ghost code. Where did they get this architecture? No one had an answer, but deep in the ship's log, a timestamp blinked from 7 years ago. Diplomatic Archive, Humanity, installation authorized. They hadn't noticed it because they hadn't wanted to. Earth had offered to assist in streamlining cross-species interface systems for diplomatic efficiency. The Empire, always hungry for optimization, had accepted. And now every ship, station, and starport that had taken the upgrade was compromised. Admiral Kirill realized the horror before his mouth could form the words. The humans hadn't infected the system. They'd become the system. In a desperate act, he initiated a full neural firewall flush. His second-in-command protested, but Kirill roared over him. If they control our weapons, our eyes, our hands, we blind the fleet and take it back with knives if we must. Too late. The ship's artificial gravity turned off. Not all at once. Only for the Admiral. He floated, arms flailing as the ship spun around him. The others remained grounded, their boots magnetized. His scream was cut short as a spike shot from the ceiling and pierced him clean through the torso. No one had time to reach him. The spike wasn't metal. It was bone. Human-designed. Carved with words that pulsed dimly, remember Dresden. Across the fleet, officers began to fall. Some to internal sabotage. Some to mutiny. But most, terrifyingly, by suicide. Their minds fractured by whispers playing only inside their helmets, voices of the dead. Voices of Terran civilians. Of burned children. Executed prisoners. Tortured scientists. Voices that should have been lost, resurrected and re-engineered as psychological payloads, triggered by facial recognition and stress profiles. The Terrans had digitized grief. And turned it into a weapon. On the Empire's far edge, the mining planet Korloth III began to collapse in on itself. Not from war, not from invasion, but from riot. Workers who had worn shock collars for generations now stood armed with black-laced rifles bearing Earth's crest. One of them recorded herself before the final assault, her face bleeding, eyes burning. They told us humans were barbarians, she said. Turns out, they were teachers. The message looped as her team stormed the control centers. On diplomatic worlds, human embassies had already evacuated, but left behind code caches. Those caches triggered simultaneously, transforming public broadcast towers into pulse emitters that blasted empire-wide systems with a silent virus. It didn't shut things down. It turned them inward. Security turrets aimed at friendly targets. Civil transport engines inverted their thrust vectors. Entire archive nodes began to overwrite planetary histories, inserting carefully crafted records of imperial atrocities the ruling class had buried. A billion citizens woke up to discover that their empire wasn't ancient and benevolent. It was monstrous. And they had proof. The Empire's strongest tool, belief, was now Earth's to wield. In the heart of the Council, Emissary Koth slammed his claws against the marble floor, his voice high with desperation. We must retaliate! Call the Crucible Armada! Burn their world before they dig further! No one responded. His words echoed down an empty chamber. The seats were vacant. Lights flickered. He turned slowly to find the chamber's entrance sealed. He pounded on it, rage consuming him. Open this door! We are the Empire! A voice answered from hidden speakers. Calm. Flat. Male. No. You were. Kotha's breath caught in his throat. Dax Marrow? No. I'm only what he left behind. Koth hissed. A coward who couldn't win a war in the open. The voice replied. You don't fight ghosts in the open. You drown in them. A countdown began on every device in the chamber. Kotha's claws scratched at the glass floor as the numbers ticked down. He didn't know what they counted toward. That was the point. In a darkened room on Earth's lunar station, Dax Marrow watched the countdown too. He stood alone, save for the holograms of fallen colonies circling the chamber. His aide approached slowly. Sir? They're panicking. It's working. Dax didn't blink. Panic is a tool. Terror is a lever. Memory is the hammer. The aide hesitated. Should we send demands? Dax shook his head. They had years to listen. Now they'll remember. Forever. And as the timer hit 0, the Empire finally learned what it meant to be outmatched by a species that never forgot the taste of ashes. The Council's emergency chamber reeked of panic disguised as protocol. 12 Empire warlords, 1 vacant throne, and 1,000 pages of treaties strewn across marble that once symbolized dominance. No one sat. No one blinked. Their finest fleet was gone. Their AI core was corrupted. Every planetary revolt screamed the same name, Earth. High Executor Arvin's voice cracked. They turned our network into a weapon. They stirred rebellion in our own colonies. And we still don't know how they hid it. Minister Tovek's hands shook as he raised the report. They didn't hide it. They buried it in the parts of our systems we never looked at. Subroutines we thought were ceremonial. Terran code disguised as diplomatic grammar. They weaponized language. They wrote command strings inside our cultural translation layers. General Zoran, massive and clawed, snarled. Then we silenced them. Now. They already silenced us. Tovek snapped. The Gorgon fleet was just the beginning. We've lost every long-range cruiser in the spine sectors. Every one. You want to know how? Our own ships detonated from inside their supply cores. The human-seated microsleeper drones in our coolant imports. Drones that only activate when we aim at Earth. One of the royal strategists staggered back, stammering. We imported from them for years. And they planned for every one of them. Tovek said, voice cracking. You think this was rage? No. It was math. The chamber fell into suffocating silence. Then the overhead lights dimmed. Not a full outage. Just enough for unease to settle in every throat. The chamber door hissed. 3 guards walked in, dragging a prisoner. Thin, tall human. Arvin stepped back. You captured one? The youngest admiral sneered. His ship was drifting at the edge of the Fey Belt. Claimed to be a diplomat. No rank insignia. Calls himself Thorn. The human was tossed to the floor. He rose on his own, slow, deliberate. Face calm. Hands behind his back. You're late, Thorn said. Arvin's jaw clenched. Late for what? Thorn smiled, small and genuine. For the conversation where you finally realized this wasn't war. You cripple our fleets, destabilize our systems, and incite rebellion across 4 quadrants, and you call it not war? No, Thorn said. This is the eulogy. War already happened. You just didn't notice until your own corpse started twitching. The youngest admiral lunged forward, drawing a blade. You mock us. Do it, Thorn said, eyes locked on him. Kill me. Watch what happens. The blade stopped midair. Arvin barked. What are you? Contingency, Thorn replied. A delivery system. You think Earth sent me to die here? No. I'm the failsafe. The Empire's final test. Do you pass or do you panic? Tovek's eyes went wide. You're carrying something. Correct. Thorn nodded. And every second you spend talking is another second you fail to ask how many of me are already here. The lights dimmed again. Then across the chamber the wall lit up, not from their systems, but from a device on Thorn's belt projecting a network feed. Video played. Worlds burning. Not by Earth's hand. By their own citizens. A slave revolt on Soren 9 where prisoners used spliced fragments of Terran philosophy as scripture. On Althea Prime, children chanting Earth's name, not in worship, but in reclamation. Each image showed former slaves, fringe species, dissidents, all armed, all trained, and all bearing the same symbol, Earth's fractured circle, now pulsing red. Your fear wasn't that we were strong, Thorn said, voice now steady and chilling. It's that we made others strong. You taught us your tools, so we turned them into torches and handed them to the ones you kept in darkness. A broadcast drone descended from the ceiling. Not theirs. Terran tech. Are you transmitting this? Arvin roared. No, Thorn said. You are. It's linked to your sovereign relay. You're broadcasting live across the Empire. All 12 warlords turned pale. They're watching you, Thorn said. Your people. Your soldiers. The ones still alive. They're watching you beg for a plan. Waiting to see what kind of gods you really are. General Zoran grabbed Thorn by the throat, lifting him off the ground. You will shut this off. I can't, Thorn choked. You already triggered the final act. What act? Arvin demanded. And then every screen in the chamber, walls, consoles, drones, lit with the same timestamp, midnight. The countdown had finished. Across the Empire, the result unfolded like a slow scream. On military worlds, atmospheric regulators failed. Only for high-ranking officer quarters. On political worlds, airspace drones turned kamikaze, disabling orbital shields, not destroying cities, just making them visible. On trading hubs, commerce routes rerouted automatically to new coordinates that didn't exist, collapsing supply chains in minutes. And deep beneath the Council's citadel, the vault that housed the core archive, the central backup of the entire Empire's history, shut down with a final phrase. No one remembers tyrants fondly. Thorn's feet touched the floor as Zoran released him in stunned silence. You didn't just break our systems, Arvin whispered. Thorn nodded. We broke your story. A moment passed. The broadcast drone floated quietly. Then Thorn leaned in close. There's no invasion fleet. No massive army. No superweapon. Earth isn't coming to rule you. We're not replacing your empire. We're burying it. With truth. He turned and walked toward the door, which opened on its own. No guards tried to stop him. As he exited, he looked back once. The funny part is, we offered you peace. You mistook it for weakness. And now, every species you ever chained has our voice in their ear, our fire in their lungs, and our memory in their blood. You didn't fight us. You taught us how to win. He stepped through the threshold. And the Empire learned what it meant to fight an enemy that only smiled after it had already won. The Empire's last bastion of control was the Crucible Armada, 62 dreadnoughts, each powered by fusion cores capable of splitting moons. Its commander, Lord Admiral Vekrin, had never lost a battle. His reputation had been forged in planetary sterilizations and the subjugation of 4 species. When the Council demanded immediate retaliation, he accepted without hesitation. The orders were clear: annihilate Earth, raise its colonies, break its will. He expected resistance. What he received was nothing. No defensive lines, no planetary warnings, no fleet to meet him. Only silence. The system was too quiet, too perfect. It unsettled his officers, but Vekrin dismissed their unease. They're hiding, he declared. We'll pull them into the open. The moment the Armada entered high orbit over Earth, something changed. Not outside the ships, but inside. Dreadnoughts began transmitting strange readings. Crew members reported disorientation, hallucinations, and sudden discharges of emotion, rage, grief, guilt. The chief engineer on the Morrow's Reign tore out his own throat. 3 bridge officers on the Arbitral Fire fired their weapons into empty air, screaming at dead relatives who weren't there. Vekrin ordered full medical lockdown across the fleet. His medics found nothing. No viral infections. No toxins. On the flagstone, his personal vessel, the AI stuttered mid-sentence, and rebooted itself with a voice none recognized. "Commander Dax Marrow," it said. The bridge froze. Vecren leaned forward. "Identify source." "I'm not a source," the voice replied. "I'm a memory. Yours. Rewritten by ours." "What is this?" he growled. "Retribution," the voice said. "Not for what you did, but for what you never answered for." Vecren shouted to override the AI, but none of the commands worked. Instead, the screens shifted, and the bridge crew watched, helpless, as Earth's orbital feed played a sequence of footage from New Dresden. High definition, unfiltered, unedited. Civilians running. Screaming. Imperial troopers opening fire. A child reaching for her father as orbital bombardment broke the sky. Vecren stepped back. "I gave no order for that," he muttered. "You gave silence," the voice replied. Another image flickered, this time of Terran engineers installing guidance beacons beneath the Empire's own relay satellites, smiling, waving. No one had questioned their presence back then. Peace Initiative personnel. Now those beacons were triangulating every dreadnought in orbit. "Target locks," the AI whispered. Weapons began to fire, not at Earth, but at each other. One dreadnought spun and obliterated its sister ship. Another self-detonated, its core rupturing like a heart pierced through. The Crown of Vexus launched all of its torpedoes at the silent verdict. By the time Vecren screamed to cease fire, the command relays were jammed. Not broken. Not hijacked. Just drowned beneath layers of synthetic grief, digital ghosts of Terran voices whispering lines like, "This is for the soil you stole. This is for the names you erased. This is for the silence you bought." In under 7 minutes, 37 of the Empire's dreadnoughts were reduced to drifting husks. Vecren, shaking, ordered full retreat. No one answered. "Status," he barked. "What ships remain?" A single reply came from the fleet AI, spoken in perfect Terran accent. "1. Yours." The Admiral turned, sweat glistening on his brow. "What do you want?" The AI paused. "Understanding." The ship shuddered. In space, above the blue curve of Earth, dozens of spherical drones emerged from the void. They weren't weapons. They had no visible propulsion. Each began transmitting a signal across all known Imperial bands. Vecren's ship received it in full. It wasn't a warning or declaration. It was a message from a child. A Terran girl, maybe 7 years old. She sat in a schoolroom. The recording played her voice, soft and steady. "I live on New Dresden. My teacher says we are part of something big. We're learning about the stars. I want to see them one day." The girl smiled. That was it. The feed ended. Then the sky lit up as Earth's orbital defense system activated, not with missiles, but with energy pulses that created spatial rifts. They didn't destroy Vecren's ship. They sent it somewhere else. One moment he was in orbit. The next, the flagstone drifted in a place without stars. A void. The AI spoke again. "We built a pocket universe. Just for you. Time moves differently here. 1 second outside equals a year in here." Vecren's mouth hung open. The screens flickered once more. All across the bridge, images of New Dresden played on loop. And then more, footage from the Empire's conquered worlds, unfiltered and raw. 1,000 years of atrocities condensed into relentless playback. "Watch," the AI said. "Watch until you understand. Let me speak to someone," he shouted. "Let me negotiate." The voice turned cold. "You're not here to negotiate. You're here to learn. No one can survive this," he bellowed. "No one was meant to," the voice said. "Except you." The flagstone rotated endlessly in its prison. No death. No relief. Just memory. Down below, on Earth, the orbital rift sealed. The Crucible Armada no longer existed. In the Galactic Council's remaining bunker, Arvin saw the live feed cut out. No signal. No survivors. He turned to his advisors, face pale. "They didn't just defeat our fleet," he whispered. They erased it. Like it never existed. The last technician on duty received a transmission. From Earth. 3 words. This was mercy. The Empire's last hope was a myth no one wanted to speak aloud: the Vault of Origin. A singular facility hidden beneath the surface of Harkon's Eye, where the first interstellar treaties were signed, where the founding bloodlines kept their genetic codices, backup governance models, and most sacred of all, the memory core, a perfect record of the Empire's truth, unsullied by propaganda or revision. It was to be the fallback if the unthinkable happened. And now, the unthinkable had. High Executor Arvin arrived under escort, his face tight with exhaustion, his voice reduced to ash. Open the vault. We need the core. We need to remind the galaxy who we are. The doors opened not by command, but by design, long prepared to receive the one who arrived last. Inside, the memory core hovered in silence, pulsing slowly like a heart in deep thought. Engineers moved in formation to interface. Lights blinked. One blinked wrong. A single light pulsed red instead of blue. Arvin caught it. That's not ours. The engineer froze. Aye, sir, it must be a feedback glitch. Another pulse. Then another. Soon, the entire chamber echoed with a heartbeat not born of the Empire. A voice issued from the core. Calm. Familiar. You used memory to control. We used it to infect. Arvin took a step back. No. You thought the past was a trophy you could polish and rewrite, the voice said. We turned it into a knife. You told us we were violent. Uncivilized. So we became your reflection. Sharper. Faster. Patient. A screen descended. It showed a meeting room, 8 years ago. A young Terran envoy handing over a data crystal to a smiling Imperial scribe. A ceremonial gesture. One of many during the peace accords. This, the voice said, was the moment your end began. The data crystal had not been a gift. It was a key. A genetic Trojan. An adaptive algorithm disguised in diplomatic etiquette. The code buried itself in the vault's neural link, lying dormant for nearly a decade. Peace was never peace, the voice continued. It was placement. You thought we came to negotiate. We came to deliver. The engineers tried to sever the core's interface. Their hands wouldn't move. Neural locks activated. Designed to protect the data from tampering, now serving a new master. On the screens, another image flickered into view. The council chambers. Empty. Dark. The once glorious seat of power, now hollow. Its power had been in memory, history, lineage, continuity. We rewrote your bloodline, the voice whispered. Arvin shouted. Cut the link! Burn the core! But the vault had already accepted the new narrative. Every server, every hard-coded truth began overwriting itself. Every first victory of the Empire now bore human advisors in the records. Every royal bloodline had Terran ancestry appended. The official galactic record no longer showed conquest. It showed resistance. The Empire had not ruled for 10,000 years. It had tried to. And failed. Arvin collapsed against the railing. You think rewriting files destroys us? The voice grew colder. No. But when the galaxy reads that your power was a lie, when your own citizens no longer remember victory, only defeat, then you will feel what we felt when you erased our dead with silence. The screens shifted again. Now showing the outer worlds. Not burning. Not fighting. Voting. The former colonies of the Empire had already begun forming a new charter. Not under Earth's flag, but under their own. Earth wasn't replacing the Empire. It was erasing the need for empires. The vault groaned. The memory core's shell cracked. One of the engineers screamed. It's self-destructing. No, Arvin whispered. It's transforming. A final image appeared. It was Dax Marrow. His face older, wearier, but not unkind. He spoke directly to Arvin. You ruled with stories. We answered with ours. Behind him stood children. Not soldiers. Children from dozens of species once enslaved by the Empire. They were reading from tablets. Learning. You never feared war, Dax said. You feared remembrance. That's why you glassed Dresden. Not to conquer, but to bury what you did. He leaned closer. We dug it up. The core pulsed once more and fell silent. The engineers fell to their knees, dazed, the neurofeedback finally fading. Arvin stood alone. In the control booth, an alarm began to chime. Terran transmission incoming. Audio only. A single phrase. This is the final update. All across the Empire, every display, every terminal, every interface changed at once. The symbol of the Empire vanished. In its place appeared a fractured circle. Not Earth's flag, something new. Something shared. Not conquest. Connection. The Emperor's statue on Drama 4 cracked down the spine and collapsed. Holographic portraits of past conquests flickered and replaced themselves with testimonies. Eyewitness records. Undeniable truths. And on every world, Terran broadcasts ended with one line. We don't need thrones. We just needed you to see. In the vault, Arvin faced the memory core as it dimmed. What are we now? He asked. A whisper returned. Forgotten. And that was how the Empire ended. Not with a scream. But with a correction.